Try.
Try.
It's on now. Touch it again.
Is it here or here? Hi, everybody. 1 second. We're finishing up getting set up. So we're using this for sound or our own.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the June 12th ERC meeting. Can people online just give me a thumbs up if you can hear us okay, or great. Okay. Then we'll get started. A quick reminder to the board before we get going, keep your camera on. So all your votes will count. So let's do a quick roll call for the board. Rayon? I see you. Could you?
Present.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Eugene here. Megan? I think she's scheduled out today. Okay. Celeste?
Here.
Linda?
I'm here.
Jackie?
Here.
Angie?
Here.
Holly?
Here.
And Kathy?
Here.
Great. Glad everyone's here. And we'll get going. Item 1, okay, now moving on to item 2. There is no one registered for book testimony, so we'll next take up consideration and possible action to approve minutes. Do I have a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
I move to approve, Celeste.
I second, Jackie.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, now to consideration of possible action to approve the consent calendar. So today, what we have on the consent calendar are the following. Extension 6, UH 035, extension 7, UH 067, extension 8, UH 071, extension 1, UTD 188, extension 12, UTD 190, extension 13, UTD 197, extension 14, UTD 206, extension 15, UTD 211, extension 16, UTA 190, extension 17, UTA 193, extension 18, UTA 214, extension 19, UTA 215, and extension 20, UTA 218. Does
One instead of 11.
where?
So one's not.
Oh, extension, sorry, instead of extension 1, extension 11. That one, UTD 188. Thank you for paying attention. And does anyone on the board wish to take any of these off of the consent calendar to discuss separately? And if not, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Ms. Holly, I motion to approve the consent calendar. Rayon, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move now to item 5, consideration and possible action to approve additional data and amendment requests. So jumping right in. First, we have data 1, UH 097. Do we have any questions or comments from the board about this request? And if not, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Angie. I'll move to approve.
Second,
This is Jackie, I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Data 2, UTD 170. Questions or comments?
This one for the researchers, so we have a new procedure for supplemental data that it wasn't clear to me what kind of data elements that this marriage records would include.
Hi, this is Derek. So yeah, we're interested in merging in ideally whether individuals within the ERC data are, once they're adults, married to each other. This comes from the Department of State Health Services marriage indices. So we'd want to create marriage pairs within the ERC data once they get married. That would be the ideal scenario to kind of conduct the analyses. But we're also, yeah.
So am I hearing correctly, this will be 01 indicator whether or not this person is married or
An
Well,
indicator to say this person is married to this person.
correct, the latter.
that will be very
Yes.
identifying.
It would be the
Yeah,
latter,
that's-
yeah.
That's pretty identified.
That's very identifying.
Is it TEA? Are they the ones he was asking to do the like marker? There's a caveat at the end of the request, like if we can't have this record, we can TEA and do blah, 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 like
Oh,
that might be acceptable.
I
Yeah,
didn't get that.
To that point, we'd be perfectly comfortable if the TA was willing to do that merge, which might be identifying of the students, such that we can observe whether an individual is married to another student in the data with a certain characteristic. For the purposes of this project, we're looking at immigrant status. So we just want to tell whether or not a student who we identified as a native student born in the US is married to an immigrant student as characterized in the TA data.
Before Linda, you chime in, if I can intervene. So you mentioned in the data request form that you want TA to merge individuals by names and birth years, which we assume that as fuzzy matching. So do you have exact birth dates or is that only birth years that you have?
We have birth year.
So that's another roadblock that with the new procedure, we specifically indicated that both agencies will not be performing any matches unless we have exact SSNs, names, and date of birth.
Okay. We also are able to merge these marriage records onto another supplementary data system outside of the ERC data that does have birth date. This is the Texas Birth Index, which has already been merged for other purposes onto the ERC data for this project. So we would be comfortable doing the marriage records merge onto the birth date data such that they can be then merged onto the ERC data under the condition, if it's too identifying to merge individuals, if the TA was willing to create this indicator whether or not a native student was married to an immigrant as characterized within the TA data, we would be perfectly comfortable doing that too.
I do think though, and I'm there, we can make sure you have a copy of the procedure, but I mean, I know this is part of a project that has already gone through it, but now we do have pretty clear procedures for supplemental data that we need, that require data dictionaries and a little more detail than we have here. So I think before we can discuss these things, we would need those pieces kind of more clearly laid out than they are right now.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Melissa. So we'll work with Derek and his team to supply those materials, correct? And then would this require the full board approval, or would you be comfortable making that
Yes.
decision? It would
No, I
need
think
the-
it will need, like, seeing that there are a few questions already that I would want to make sure
Okay.
that the other board members see, but I do think we can talk about whether this could fit into what you're meeting coming up.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll get that to you and we'll.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so then for now, do we have a motion to decline as submitted? Data to UTV.
I move the motion to decline. This is Eugene.
Second,
A second. This is Kathy.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Moving on to data 3, UTD 185. Any questions or comments about this one? And if not, do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve Celeste.
A second,
This is Angie. I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Great, data 4. Questions or comments from the board? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
I'll second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Data 5, UTD 200. Questions or comments on this one?
For this one, are the researchers requesting the special education files from TA?
Yes, that's right. This is Ben Fagenberg from the research team.
Is it possible to specify the file names and the years that the researchers are requesting? Because
Yes, we can certainly put that together. I don't have that on hand, but we can provide that. Absolutely.
Anybody else have questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add the specific names and years of the data sets?
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
Second,
second, this is Eugene.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thanks. All right, data 6, UTA 2. Questions or comments?
So I would like to see the data dictionary and then also specific years and the types of the AP exam scores.
Do you all have that information yet, like more detail about the actual files? For the AP?
Hi, this is Matt Gianni. I don't think I have the data dictionary because College Board has it. I'm not sure if TEA has it also. But we do have the years. I think it's 2012 up through 2019, if I can recall correctly. And it's AP math courses specifically. So AP statistics, AP calculus AB, AP calculus BC. And it's taken a while to get the agreement in place with College Board, but my understanding is that it's essentially signed off by College Board, TEA, Coordinating Board, and UT at this point. So that's why we're submitting the formal amendment now.
Jogging my memory on this one.
I can help on the data dictionary. This is Linda. Matt, it truly is AP exam, test score, student ID, year, something like that, but we can help with the specific variables.
Yeah, but I forgot this was one that TEA already has, so I think this is
That's
different
right. That's
situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I can talk later about
Yeah. Do we want to add like officially in here the years though on the form?
Right.
Okay.
so specific years and the AP exams.
Okay. So, well, before I make a motion, does anyone else have questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to just add the years of the supplemental data files and the specific exams?
This is Kathy. I move to approve with the identified amendments or specifications.
This is Rayon, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I
You opposed? Thanks for the clarifying conversation. All right, data 7, UTA 231. Questions or comments? All right. If not, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
Second,
I'll second Celeste.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Data 8, UTA 256. Questions or comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve? Yeah. I'll move to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Data not, what are we on, sorry, 9, UTA 258. Questions, comments about that? Not, do I have a motion to approve? I was for Eugene.
Kathy, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to considering additional data requests and extensions. So data 10 and extension 1 UH 60. Questions or comments from the board on this one? Not motion to approve.
This is Holly, I motion to approve.
Kathy, I second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, data 11 and extension 2, UT 150. Questions on this one? And if not, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
Then I second. Angie.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Data 12 and extension 3, UTA 155. On this one.
We have a note here that WT was already approved in December 2024. So this will be just extension request.
I have a motion to approve. Oh,
I
with
move-
amendment. Do I need to? I mean, we'll like double approve the data. I don't know if that's. Really
So
approved.
I did email Celeste just to tell you that I saw it under this. And it's only an extension. But
Okay.
I don't know if I caused the confusion because I wasn't sure whether I should include both applications. And so I put both of them there. So maybe that led to the issue, but it's just an extension request. You're correct.
Perfect. Then I guess I do a motion to approve with the amendment to make this an extension request. Is that extension only?
A motion to approve, Holly, with the amendment.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
Thank you.
Okay, and now moving on to consideration and approval of extension requests. So only ones that were not on consent. Extension 4, yeah, okay, just making sure I'm on the right page. Extension 4 UH 017. Questions or comments? And if not, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
I'll second Celeste.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Extension 5 UH 26. Questions or comments? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve Celeste.
This is Angie. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. These are all on that, right? Going to extension 9. Okay. Olivia, could we move to extension 9? Thank you. All right, extension 9 UTD 116. Questions or motion to approve? Approved. Do you have a second?
I'll second
second.
Celeste.
It's less stormy. Either one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Extension 10, UTD 157. Questions or motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I move to approve.
Second.
Second, Eugene.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. 11 is on consent. With extensions. Yeah. Okay, moving on to consideration and approval of new research projects. So we'll start with proposal 1, including remote access requests UH 109, school turnaround in Texas public schools, impact on student and campus outcomes. So we have researchers here. Let's talk about this one.
Hi, my name is Courtney Durbin, and I'm a manager of research and data for Good Reason Houston, alongside my colleague Patrick Gill, who is the director of research and data strategy, who's also on this call. As Good Reason Houston, we are a Houston-based education nonprofit that builds awareness of, advocates for, and advises local school systems on measures to improve the quality of public education available to every child in every neighborhood. We recently began conducting original research to work towards our goal of doubling the rate of public school graduates who earn a living wage by 2040. So in terms of this project and use for ERC data, we're hoping to develop a more robust understanding of school turnaround models in Texas, such as Houston ISD's new education system model and similar reforms in comparable districts like Dallas ISD's accelerating campus excellence model, as well as Houston's largest and most successful charter operator, Yes Prep Public Schools. So researchers will be examining reform effects on both students and campuses over time through constructing cohorts based on the exposure to turnaround reforms and comparing them to non-treatment groups, which will allow us to identify if turnaround reforms result in positive student and campus level outcomes, if those outcomes and improvements are sustained at campuses over time and to subsequent cohorts, as well as how effects and sustainability vary across different turnaround models and school types in Texas. So our research focus is specifically on Houston and Texas, and it's not only timely, but it is urgent. And our team is hoping to directly inform recommendations for HISD's transition back to local control and contribute to the larger body of turnaround research reform and generating knowledge around Texas-specific initiatives such as the School Action Fund, SB 1882, and HB 1842. And ultimately, our goal for conducting this research is to inform decision-making that creates better educational environments for students to have access to quality public schools, regardless of their backgrounds.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board, from the researchers?
Yeah, I'm just, thanks for submitting your proposal. I was just wondering, can you give us a better sense of kind of the student outcomes and campus level outcomes that you are examining for your project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be looking at some academic outcomes around STAR as well as TELPAS, but then we're also hoping to explore attendance, discipline, as well as course taking practices. And then we'll also tie in accountability, give or take, around what unfolds to try and better understand what the bigger picture of sustainability looks like.
And sorry, can you, what about, so you said campus level outcomes. So are you looking at like teacher retention? Are you looking like what do those look like?
Yeah, well, so we're taking our student level cohorts to better understand the student level outcomes, but then on the larger scale, essentially identifying campus level student performance.
Oh, so aggregating at the campus level.
Yes, correct.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
This is Patrick Gill from Good Reason Houston. Just chiming in to add color to that. The idea is that we'll be looking at the sustainability, the immediate and sustainability in terms of long-term outcomes at both the student level. Do students that are exposed to these reforms experience long-term benefits and do campuses that were exposed to the reforms experience even after maybe in the case of like the ACE model in Dallas, that was a time-bound thing. After ACE is after a campus returns to functioning outside of the ACE model, do they still continue to see benefits at the campus level in terms of their performance and accountability ratings and stuff? So we're looking at the sustainability kind of at two levels.
So I have a follow-up question. You just mentioned the long-term outcomes, and I think it's in research question 1 and 2. Long-term outcomes, or long-term effect, I guess is what it is in your question, but you only have K-12 data. I just wondered what you considered long-term.
Well, because the student cohorts we're looking at are 3rd into 4th grade, that's where we're going to be matching. So we're going to use 3rd grade as kind of our baseline year. So they have 1 year of academic like star outcomes prior to being introduced into an intervention. We're then going to be able to track their outcomes at the K-12 level long term. Sorry, when I say long term, I'm not talking post-secondary outcomes in this case. I just mean like years down the line in terms of their academic benefits and that kind of thing.
Okay,
So
thank you.
yeah.
Unrelated to research, I think we noticed that the remote form, there was supplemental data listed, so if it sounds like you're not requesting supplemental data, so if we could make the revision to remove supplemental data language from the remote access form.
Yes, we do not need supplemental data, so we can remove that.
Any other questions or comments? And there are none. Do I have a motion to approve the amendment to remove supplemental data from the remote form?
This is Rayan. I move to approve with the revisions noted to remove the supplemental data.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all for being here. All right, proposal 2, including remote access requests UH 110, individual instruction in large groups, tutoring with statewide mandates. Want here to talk about this one?
Hi, yes. I'm Michael Jensen. I'm a researcher on this project. I'm a graduate student in economics and education at the University of Notre Dame. The core of this project lies around policy analysis. In 2021, the Texas House Legislature passed Bill 4545. This bill was relatively simple in its thesis. It was that students who motivated mostly by COVID learning loss, students who failed to meet grade level expectations in a STAR subject test the previous year would now require moving forward 30 hours of individualized instruction in that subject provided by the teacher or the school the following school year. This law was built on a host of evidence suggesting that individualized instruction is one of the most useful and most beneficial strategies for learning. But it also had mixed reviews from some of the teachers that were tasked with implementing this law. A lot of the previous literature on tutoring is it's very small. It's RCTs with 100 to 1,000 students hand selected. Whereas this law, we know that Texas educates 10% of all students in America. This law affected 1 million kids at any given school year. So my suggestion and the proposal for this project is to analyze this law and define some causal evidence on whether or not it was beneficial for the students that it affected. I think that this can provide useful evidence for other educators around the US, but particularly in the example of this law is currently still being revised. 2 years after this law was passed, taking some of this feedback from teachers, it was revised to limit some of the effects of it. And so this is kind of an open question on the effectiveness of this law. I'd like to look at how it's affecting students. I'd like to look at how it's affecting teachers, what it is doing to teacher retention in these schools. I also looked at how it's shifting things in the classroom for classmates of affected students.
Great, thank you. Do I have any questions or comments from the board for the researcher?
Oh, I just wanted to say that we are supporting an ERC project that is looking at the effects of this policy. So, Michael, I'll connect you to those researchers in case there's some
That'd be great.
learnings that can be had. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Board. Do have one question about. Sorry, the FERPA statement. I think it just mentions audit, but technically it's evaluation, which I know is part of the same exception, but I think it might be good to use the word or add the word evaluation to the.
Sure,
the
I can add
That's
that.
more on evaluation. Switch it up to that, because
Yeah.
lawyers will get picky on that.
Okay, yeah, so well, I mean, I think it's obvious it fits that exception, but let's just change the word from audit to evaluation.
And I think with little more details about how your proposal will be evaluating these policies, just little more details, that will be nice revision.
Okay.
There aren't any. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendment for the revision to the FERPA statement?
I move to motion with the revisions to FERPA exceptions.
I second UG.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks so much for. Proposal 3, including remote access requests, UH 111, the impacts of ability signals on educational and labor market outcomes. Authors on this one.
Hi, I'm Dansa. I'm the researcher for this project. Me and the other researcher, Kennedy Johnston, is a PhD student at Texas A&M. And with this project, we're trying to investigate how signals of academic ability, such as college GPA or high school dual credit participation, affect students' long-term educational and labor market outcomes. We're going to focus on 2 distinct settings. The first one we're trying to look at is the role of college GPA. GPA is one of the most known indicator for academic performance, and we know that many employers use it as a screening and hiring tool. There are researchers about how a lot of employers use a hard cutoff at 3.0, and this raises an important questions like, do small differences in GPA, like 3.01 and 2.99, leads to a meaningful differences in job outcomes. So we want to see the signaling in that situation first. And then we want to analyze the effect of dual credit programs, which is very well known, and it allows high school students to earn college credits while they're in high school. These programs have been growing rapidly, especially in Texas, but we think the evidence on their long-term effect, like in labor market situations, are still limited. So we want to leverage different policy changes that happened in Texas to see, to check in a quasi-experimental situation how these dual credits policies have impacted students' academic and labor outcomes. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board for the researchers?
Yeah, I noticed a small discrepancy between data that was requested and then what was included on the remote access form. Specifically, I noticed TWC wage data was requested in the proposal, but it's not on the form. And it looked like there were just a few other fields requested, but not on the form. I don't know if that needs to be updated.
Yes, I believe we just listed as we were fixing the proposal. Yes, we could add that.
And when you're talking about GPA, you're talking about at the college level, is that correct?
Yes, GPA will be the college level and dual credit will be the high school level.
And there is a GPA in the data. Because I know you were wanting supplemental data to create.
So yes, GPA supplemental data that we want to create is how each university have a different GPA policies. Like some will have different calculations. Some will have like 4.3 as their maximum. Some has 4.5 as their maximum, or some has 4 as their maximum. We want to see those from the university webpage and want to supplement that into the data set.
So Celeste, essentially the supplemental data is functionally publicly
Yes.
accessible. It's just not it's not available in the ERC currently.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. And one other thing, are you trying to link students to teachers in the high school level?
Yes, that will be the goal since dual credits are taught by different types of teachers, and we want to see what type of teacher has taught the dual credit program.
Okay, you're going to need a few more files to actually do the linking. Because I think right now you have 3, but you'll need, see, what did I have? P class, P teacher class assign, and you probably want to go ahead and get the P class roster data as well. And Linda, this may be more of a question for you. I noticed they're requesting ACT and SAT data. Is that, I mean, I don't think that's available. Is that correct?
Not from TEA. Mm-mm.
Yeah, we can remove that from the list. There are some indicators though of some test scores in the 002 and the 00B for university students. So yes.
For the students that go to college, yes.
Right, correct. Other questions or comments? Not, do I have a motion to approve with the following amendments? An update to the remote access form to include the data sets requested. The addition of the request for P class, P teacher class assign, and P class roster data sets. And also the removal of requests for SAT and ACT files. I have a motion to approve that.
This is Angie. I'll move to approve with those changes.
This is Holly, I second. Angie.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. To proposal 4, including remote access request UH 112, tracing trajectories, mapping dual credit, career technical education, and course combinations to college and career outcomes in Texas. I have a researcher here to talk about this one.
Yes, hi, my name is Jacob Kirksley. I'm an assistant professor at Texas Tech. Thank you for considering our proposal. This project seeks to provide the most holistic evaluation to date of dual credit and CTE course taking in Texas, with a particular focus on how these programs shape students' long-term trajectories, both in college and the workforce. We have three key questions. What is the full picture of dual credit impacts across the whole of a student's life, inclusive of both short-term impacts realized during or shortly after the program and long-term impacts they may realize in a career? Can distinct CTE pathways be identified based on the variety of course completions among students that correlate with specific educational and workforce outcomes? And three, how has the implementation of HB8 influenced student access, engagement, and outcomes in dual credit and CTE pathways? We will use the data to trace student course taking from middle school through college and into the workforce, applying latent class analysis to identify patterns of course combinations and using quasi-experimental methods, including course and exact matching and fixed effect models to assess impacts on outcomes. These approaches will allow us to isolate the effects of dual credit and CTE participation while accounting for student background, school context, and shifting policy conditions over time. Dual credit and CTE programs are central to Texas's education to workforce strategy, particularly under HB8's new outcomes-based funding model. Yet policymakers lack granular evidence on which specific combination of courses for which students these investments are paying off. This research will identify high-leverage pathways that lead to post-secondary credentials and high-wage careers. Our findings will support decisions about program design, teacher staffing, and student access, ensuring that public investments in college and career readiness deliver on their promise for all Texas students. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board for the researchers?
Guessing similar to the last proposal, removal of ACT and SAT data sets from the requested data. Those aren't available in the ERCs.
At least in my copy of the proposal, we list the files from the coordinating board. I could be wrong, and maybe that's somewhere else, but those are the files we meant.
Well, we don't have, so the files that are labeled like ACT, SAT, ERC are no longer, like they used to be in the ERC, but they're not anymore. But if you didn't request those, then.
Okay, yep, that makes sense.
But, oh yeah, it's in there, so we'll.
You're on page 14.
Yeah, but there is, like I said before, for students who go to college, there's some score information in the 002 and on the B for SAT and ACT. Any other questions?
You know, I know you're looking back in time some, but you're basically requesting all the all the ERC data. And one thing I know you're concentrating on is HB8, which started in 2023. And I was just curious why you wanted to go back to 1990 if you're concentrating on 2023.
I think because when you look at the different revisions to like Perkins, for example, you get to where, right, like 2010 is one of the big pivotal years where we are interested in kind of like big macro policy change. And so we would need information for those students. I can't do the math in my head, but going back quite a ways to even form cohorts of students for whom they didn't even have access to CTE. So it's kind of trying to create this counterfactual at multiple time points across the policy landscape from the very kind of onset of CTE, especially for those that we're going to look at some of those longer run economic outcomes, to find the counterfactual that we can construct with those earlier cohorts of students going as back in as far in the data as we can.
Okay, thank you.
I am excited about how many proposals this time, including this one that are looking at CTE specifically. It's just been an area that I think we haven't had a lot of information about. So I'm excited to see what you all find. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to remove the request for ACT and SAT files?
I move to approve with the amendment.
This is Holly, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here today.
Thank y'all so much.
Okay, proposal 5, including remote access requests UH 113, mapping educational mobility, academic and career outcomes at Lone Star College. Anyone here to talk about this one?
Yes. Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Rodriguez-Sick from Lone Star College, one of the lead researchers. Lone Star College is considered a very large college for the state of Texas. We average over 80,000 students in a semester, and of those, we have about 26,000 in dual credit. And so our research project seeks to understand the educational and career lifespan of our students from high school dual credit through Lone Star and transferring into our universities and out through the career pathways, especially related in high need fields. So we're looking at data from TEA, Coordinating Board, and Texas Workforce Commission to better understand those pathways so that we can grow our strategic planning and align to what the Gulf Coast region is looking for those high need growth and credentials of value. Our research questions are 3, and they're sort of separated into those subgroups of dual credit, Lone Star College graduates, and then out into the career, and then of the graduates who transfer into a 4-year institution and how their outcomes follow after graduating from their 4-year institution. We are a very large population, so we believe the data sets that we have will help other community colleges understand their pathways a little better. We do have several goals under our new chancellor, and goal 5 is workforce quality and partnerships. And we believe this research study will help us in that endeavor, as well as the Coordinating Board 60 by 30 strategic planning. This research study will help us improve our institutional practices and expanding our dual credit programs and enhancing our academic support and refining our transfer pathways.
Great, thank you. Have questions or comments from the board, the researchers? One quick thing to know, I think in the purpose statement about what exception this meets, it says it meets the studies because of developing, validating, administer predictive tests, but that doesn't seem to really fit the research questions. Seems like it probably fits an improving instruction under that purpose exception. So I think revising that.
Yeah, we can definitely refine that.
For supplemental data, I know for the data elements that you listed in the proposal, it includes TSDS number, but is it also for matching purpose? I'm thinking about from TA and THSP's perspectives, is it possible for you to include names and date of birth and SSNs as well?
Yes, so we have 2 ways of tracking those students, and that was something that we needed to, I guess, identify moving forward if the proposal was approved. The first data set would go straight from Cypher ISD to TEA in identifying the college academy kids. And so we would never see those data sets. We would just pull them and tag them in the database. I think that's what the procedure had said. Then if the data sets are coming from us, which we do tag them once they start to enroll, we were just trying to figure out not being able to not lose that attrition from the time they're selected to the time they enroll, because there is a small attrition in that cohort. if it comes from us, then yes, we definitely can add those data sets. It was name and birth.
So, sorry, do you have two types of supplemental data? Like some is being requested straight from TEA and some you all will be providing?
So the initial data set, there was one data set of College Academy students that are selected by Cypher ISD. That program is similar to early college high school, but it is just a dual credit program. This past May, they graduated 750 high school students with their associate degree with us, just through the dual credit program. We wanted to look at the success rates of that model compared to regular dual credit students and early college and P-TECH models, because it's quite inexpensive in relationship to the other models and producing higher percentages of graduates than the regular or like national early college models. So we wanted to confirm and validate those pieces. So the data sets would come straight from the ISD to TEA. I think that was one of the ways that data could be sent to, whereas the researchers, we wouldn't touch it. But then when they enroll with us, their first enrollment with us is their sophomore year in high school. There is some attrition with the from the freshman to the sophomore year. And so if the process with Cypher and TEA didn't work, we could then, Lone Star would then submit the same data set, but knowing there would be a slight attrition between the students being selected in their 9th grade year and the number of students who actually enroll with us through the College Academy and take their first dual credit class. But we're okay. We'd like the first one to capture everyone, but we're okay with the second one. I'm going to say either way, I think the name, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments from the board? If there aren't any, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to revise the purpose statement?
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
This is Angie. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, proposal 6, including remote access request UTD 228, impacts of financial incentives on post-secondary outcomes.
Hello, my name is Jan de Crescent. I'm a PhD student at the University of Chicago. The crux of this project is to look at HB8. So previous to 2023, community colleges were funded 90% pro rata based on the student credit hours in the college, with a small incentive mechanism for the number of student success points that comprise around 10%. Following HB8 in the 2023-24 academic year, 90% of appropriations for community colleges are now tied to success metrics, varying from credentials of value to employment in high demand fields and the number of students that transfer to a 4-year institution. Not only are these novel ways of funding colleges, but it has also led to a huge growth in the state appropriations to community colleges in Texas. So our research questions are twofold. First off, how do community colleges respond to the performance-based financial incentives imposed under HB8? So here we're thinking of things like program sizes, resource allocation, spending, selectivity of non-open enrollment majors, things like nursing. And then secondly, how does it sort of change the composition of admitted students? Are there now students coming into the community college programs from different academic backgrounds, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and so forth? And then secondly, we'd like to look at sort of
if the community colleges are achieving the stated goals, if they're able to hit these success metrics outlined by HBOA. In particular, GPAs, graduation rates, transfer rates, these sorts of things. The main way that we're going to look at it is through an event study, or also by comparing schools that have more incentive to follow, who had prior to HBA fewer students that were achieving these success metrics, to schools who beforehand they already had a program that was living up to these success metrics. And then the benefits to Texas we see are that on the one hand, policymakers want to incentivize universities to allocate their resources and funding in the best possible way to increase student outcomes. But we also want to make sure that we target the things that are least prone to perverse incentives, so that there's less gaming of the system, so to say, and that we're really getting students to improve.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board, the researcher?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I noticed the abstract that was on the remote access form is for a different proposal. I don't know if that matters, but yeah, it's for one of our later proposals dealing with homeschooling.
Oh, we will correct that. I am sorry
Yeah.
for the oversight.
No, it was just strange because then when I read
Yeah.
through the proposal, it wasn't there, but then I saw it in a later one.
I'm so sorry. Yes, we will get that
No,
set.
I just didn't know if that needed to be corrected.
Thank you, Angie.
And then also think the FERPA statement may need to be a little more specific. It doesn't say which exemption it meets. I think it would be study, as you're looking at financial changes, not like evaluating an actual program.
I can take a closer look at that for sure. 100%.
You also mentioned that you're going to be looking at discipline data and I guess some of the economically disadvantaged. And you didn't request much of TEA data, which I'm assuming that's where that's coming from. I wasn't sure because I didn't really see the TEA data reflected in the research questions. Wasn't sure how you.
Or like, is your question how we're going to use the TEA data for our research questions?
Yes.
Yeah, so essentially we want to make sure, we want to see if, we want to basically control for the students' backgrounds before the community college process. And so one way of doing that is to look at what kind of courses they've taken in the high school and middle school level, so that we can see if post HB8 different kinds of students are attending community colleges. And the same thing goes for the socioeconomic status and national school lunch programs that are administered at the TEA level rather than the college level, the THEC.
Right. I just think you might need a P-attend or P-enroll if you want to look at some of those, economically disadvantaged, whether they're special ed, all of those things. You haven't requested the data for it.
Okay.
And also mentioned discipline, and you haven't requested that data either.
I'm not sure that we talked much about discipline, but
I think on page 6 is where it mentions enrollment counts by, maybe it's discipline. Okay. Then maybe not. Maybe that's discipline as opposed to disciplinary.
yeah, sorry, that see how that's confusing.
Okay. But still, if you want any student characteristics, you're going to need files that you haven't requested.
Okay, I can double check that. I thought it would have been the demographic graduate file that would have helped us.
Sorry, I'm just trying to follow along as well. Jan, did you request the high school graduate file?
Correct.
Graduate, yeah.
That has demographic data in it, Celeste.
Enough that that's enough, I guess, because, there's more specifics in P enroll or P attend, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're comfortable, Jan, we could always you could always submit an additional data request if you need additional student characteristic data.
Yeah, I think from our first pass, the graduate file was enough, but
Okay.
that's very helpful for us to look again.
Thank you, Celeste.
Yeah, sorry, what was that final decision before I make a motion to not add those files to this request and only if later if it's needed?
Yeah, no, I mean, the files that Celeste thought Jan needed are not necessary, at least in this moment in time.
Other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve with the following amendments? Update to the remote access form and a revision of the FERPA statement.
This is Angie. I'll move to approve with those changes.
This is Holly, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Proposal 7, including remote access requests UTD 229, emergent bilingual programs, Texas, and educational attainment. Someone to talk about this one?
Hello, everyone. I'm Camille.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jorge. We're both PhD students in economics at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Our project studies the effects of emerging bilingual programs in Texas on educational outcomes. For some motivation, over 67 million people in the US speak a language other than English at home. And since English proficiency is linked to economic mobility, studying programs for emergent bilingual or EB students, as they're called, is crucial for informing policies that can reduce achievement gaps and improving long-term success. There is ongoing debate on the most effective approach to educating EB students while ensuring quality education for native English speakers. EB students are typically placed in either bilingual education, where some instruction is provided in their own native language, or English as a second language, which is conducted completely in English. And these programs differ in cost and social integration and long-term academic and economic impacts, which we aim to investigate. We're planning to conduct a quantitative analysis to fill in research gaps on which approaches are most beneficial to EB students and their non-EB peers. And specifically, we aim to answer the following questions. How do various EB programs such as ESL, transitional bilingual education, and dual language immersion affect the academic outcomes of students in K through 12 and post-secondary education? How do these programs affect labor market outcomes, and how do the effects of EB programs vary with a student's demographics and school district? The Texas ERC holds the most complete data archive available for answering our research questions. In particular, we require data on students' TELPAS scores and measures of academic achievement, both for EB students and their peers over time. Texas is an especially relevant context for this study since all students reporting a language other than English spoken at home are required to take the TELPAS exam, which determines classification into EB programs. We strongly believe this research can benefit Texas education policymakers and school leaders. As of the 2020 academic year, Texas served over 1 million EB students, making up about 20% of the state's student population and nearly a quarter of all EB students in the US. The overall graduation rate for Texas students in 2020 was 90% compared to only 78% for EB students.
Ensuring better support for EBs is essential to improving long-term educational and economic outcomes, and a clearer understanding of how federal and state resources impact EB student achievement is critical to closing educational gaps. Ultimately, our research aims to guide improvements in EB education, increasing opportunities for all Texas students. Thank you for the opportunity to present about our project, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board for the researchers?
This is the one that the mentioned disciplinary infractions on page 3, and you just need the disciplinary data if you really want to look at that.
Okay, we'll certainly add that then, for sure. Thank you.
Comment about the FERPA exemption that you listed that your proposal will develop, validate, administer predictive tests, plus administer student aid programs or improve instruction. I would just specify with the detail which exemption and which how your proposal actually qualifies for such exemption instead of listing all this out. It's not administrating student aid programs.
Got it. Thank you very much. We'll make that change.
Questions or comments? If there aren't any, do I have a motion to approve with the following amendments, the addition of the TA disciplinary data and revision of the FERPA statement?
This is Kathy. I move to approve with the identified amendments.
I second Celeste.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for being here. Proposal 8, including remote access requests UT 230, strategic course selection. Have the presentation up.
Hi, my name is Elena. I'm a PhD student in economics at Yale. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My project strategic course selection aims to answer the big picture question of how students are making educational choices in high school and what the effects of these choices are. This is motivated by the fact that high school is really when students begin to have a substantial amount of choice over the type of education they receive. And we know that the type of education received really does matter for future life outcomes. Obviously, there are many reasons students may choose to take particular classes or endorsement plans as students trade off a variety of short and long-term benefits and costs. I intend to focus primarily on how 2 policy levers affect student decisions: graduation course requirements and the interaction of the top 10% program and local district policies. As we all know, the introduction of the FHSP changed the requirements for graduation, increasing flexibility by introducing endorsement plans. This has potentially direct effects on student course taking by changing which classes are required for a diploma, but it also adds a new dimension of choice, namely the choice of the graduation plan itself. Here, my work would aim to provide, among other things, additional information on the effects of the FHSP and particularly through the mechanism of the student course taking choices. The second policy lever is the interaction of the top 10% and local district policies. The passage of the top 10% program in 1997 required districts to create class rank policies for the computation of, GPA computation policies for the computation of class rank. These vary widely across districts, creating different incentives to take classes. This occurs because different districts include or exclude different classes from their computation, and many districts choose to upweight particular classes for various reasons. This work would explore an underexplored dimension of the top 10 program, namely impacts to students before the college application and enrollment process. In addition, it would contribute to a current policy discussion as SB 1191, which is currently at the governor's desk, would require the commissioner to develop a standard method of computing high school GPA across the state. And hopefully my work would be able to provide some evidence on how this could potentially be impacting students. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
This is Rayan. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Proposal 9, including remote access requests, UTD 231, longitudinal outcomes of homeschooled students in higher ed and the workforce in Texas compared to public school students. I just wanted to talk about this one.
Yes, thanks for having us here. My name is Jeremy Newman. I'm the Vice President of Policy at the Texas Homeschool Coalition. I'm here with John Thompson, who's the Clinical Assistant Professor of Economics at Kennesaw State University. You'll have to forgive me, I developed a cough this morning, so hopefully that doesn't interfere too much. But the kind of motivation behind the study here is that the homeschool community, as a lot of people know, is exploding nationwide, but especially in Texas. We have somewhere between about 500,000 and 620,000 homeschoolers in Texas right now. It's approximately double the size of the accredited private school community. But despite that, the research available on the homeschool community is kind of limited. It's certainly anything Texas specific is very limited. And a lot of the insights we do have are anecdotal just from working in the marketplace. And there, especially post-COVID, has really emerged a very new, different type of student profile that everyone's still trying to get a handle on, where the average student now is not someone who just went to one type of education and did that K through 12. They are often moving between 2 or 3 or 4 different types of education, from public school to private school to homeschooling. And we do a lot of work on policy in the legislature and in conversations with the lieutenant governor and the chairman of the education committees in the House and the Senate. Essentially what we came to was there are some programs that we need to do an evaluation of whether or not adding homeschooler eligibility to those programs would make sense. And data like this would be really useful for those and for future programs. And so the goal of this particular study is to do a descriptive examination of the long run outcomes for homeschool students compared to their peers, looking at things like college matriculation, performance and completion, labor market performance compared to their peers. And then there are kind of 2 different demographics that we're looking at as well. So one would be students who enter college with a designation of having graduated as a homeschooler. And then a second one is students who leave the public school system and list homeschooling as the reason for leaving. And for that second one, we're somewhere around 50,000 students per year right now is what Texas has for students who are leaving the public school to homeschool. And the difference between those students versus ones who were homeschooled growing up, that was their default style of education, can be pretty substantial. And we're trying to understand better the difference in characteristics and needs of those different communities. And so the types of policy insights that this would be leveraged for would be, as examples for things that came up even this legislative session, Senate Bill 895 was one that would have was considering expanding FAST access. So that's funding for dual credit programs for low-income families, expanding that access to homeschool students. House Bill 20 was a workforce commission or a workforce training bill that passed that offers a dual credit style program for public school students, and eligibility for homeschoolers was considered, but didn't ultimately pass. But data related to the things we're talking about would be useful for that type of thing, and the findings for how homeschoolers participate in other similar programs like the dual credit programs, which we've had in Texas for a couple decades. And one really big obvious one is Senate Bill 2, which is the school choice program that passed. And even now, we're in conversations with a lot of different providers and with the comptroller's office to try and understand how implementation on this has to work. And some of the big questions are around, well, what exactly are the needs of this community, and how does it differ for students who have been homeschooling for a long time and might be better plugged in versus students who are just starting, might have come out of the public school system and might have different needs than the homeschoolers who've been around for a long time. And the findings that we could get on questions like that might affect pretty substantially the long-term design of some of the pieces of that program. And then the last big piece of it is market insights. We have hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of local homeschool groups in Texas who are always trying to figure out what the needs are of the community, because it's a very diverse community. And the types of insights we could get from data like this would help develop the products and services that that community needs. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Did have a comment about the FERPA exemption language. You mentioned it's meets the evaluation exception because it evaluates SB 82. But I would say, I mean, you have research questions that span beyond that. So I think possibly considering a different FERPA exception might fit, like studies for approving instruction. I think a lot of your questions fit that. So I would consider expanding how you're relating this work to the FERPA exception and possibly changing that.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely something we can take a look at, and John, especially on our team, might have even more insights on that.
Absolutely, that's something we'd be happy to do.
Questions or comments from the board? There aren't any. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to revise the FERPA statement?
I move to approve with the amendment.
This is Jackie, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, proposal 10, including remote access request UTD 232. Research proposal to identify how students attending childcare centers and home-based providers receiving supports from Educational First Steps academic outcomes compared to their counterparts. Someone talk about this one? Hi.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dominique McCain. I am the president and CEO of Educational First Steps. Thank you all for considering our proposal. Just to give you a little bit of background, my career kind of led to this proposal because I started my career as a classroom teacher in middle school. I then went into leading educator prep. I then went into leading early childhood education in Dallas ISD. I then worked for the Commit Partnership and did regional work around early childhood education. And ultimately, what I've learned in my career and choosing of where I landed next was that early really matters on so many levels. I think we know that as the state of Texas, we've done a lot of work around pre-K support and, high quality pre-K kindergarten. I'd like to give a lot of credit to my friends over at TWC and all of the due diligence done around childcare quality in this state. And yet we still don't have the evidence that lets us know that the programming of high quality childcare providers and home-based providers is actually leading to outcomes once children enter school. And so we'd like to do this research project mostly because as Educational First Steps, and just to give you a little bit about us, we're a nonprofit organization in DFW. Excuse me, we partner with over 200 childcare center and home-based providers, and we support them specifically with becoming nationally accredited as our way of getting them to quality, or NACE accredited. And we also support them with improving the quality of service that their educators can provide. What you all know that is near and dear to my heart is that our early childhood educators do not have a system of support wrapped around them for certification. And because of that, Educational First Steps comes alongside them to say, if your center quality is high and your teacher quality is high, then children should be ready for school. And so we currently collect several pieces of data within our network. You'll see those on the supplemental data report, but we really would like access to the ERC data because we already collect this rich information about children, but we don't know what happens once they enter school. And so what we would like to do is be able to have access to this data, make these comparisons. And the last point I'll make with regard to why this is critical to us as an organization is we've been around 30 years. We've been doing this work for 30 years in our communities. And we've had one theory of change that was really just about if a center is high quality, do you see impact in student ability to go enter school and succeed? We've done some localized studies with just that theory of change. What we've now done is added to our theory of change, specifically around the teacher's ability to improve their interactions with students, around the owner and business owner or provider's ability to lead a strong business. And so as we've gained additional points of data as an entity, we're interested in making sure that we can connect that. We also see the importance of this in serving Texas as a state. We hope that these findings will inform policy decisions regarding early childhood education, resource allocation, focusing on optimizing support for students without resources. Our work is done mostly and almost exclusively in zip codes that are identified as either childcare deserts or under-resourced communities. And so this is my first time doing this. I'm a little bit nervous, y'all forgive me, please. But it's such a critical point in our evolution as an organization. And I hope that you all can see the value that this would bring. Our intention here is really to be able to say, when children are getting high quality supports earlier than when they enter school, those supports are actually informing how well that child can perform. I say to my staff all the time, the best gift you can give a teacher is that the child entering their classroom is ready for the class they're prepared to teach. And so because we know kids are entering school with deficits, we are hoping to prove that through the work we're doing, we're eliminating those deficits as an organization. I welcome any questions. I went way off script. My friends would probably be upset with me because they did a lot of preparation, but I speak from the heart and with passion because it's the work I've committed my life to.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Holly, I motion to approve.
This is Kathy, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Proposal 11, including remote access requests UTA 267, career and technical education and labor market resilience.
Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Suter. I'm a PhD student at Harvard, and this project would be in collaboration with Caroline Chin, who's also on this call, and she's a PhD student at MIT. So we are really motivated by transformations to the US labor market in recent decades. You've seen declines in traditional manufacturing, and the rise of specialized sectors like technology and healthcare have really widened economic disparities and left non-college educated workers particularly vulnerable. Career and technical education programs offer a promising pathway for workforce development by promoting occupation-specific training that aligns with the needs of high-demand industries. So we are interested in understanding how CTE programs influence education and labor market outcomes like degree completion, employment, and wages. We would also look at what specific programs or specializations yield the greatest benefits, how student characteristics shape these outcomes, and how CTE supports resilience during economic downturns or shifts in occupational demand. We'll focus specifically on high school as well as community college, including non-credit CTE coursework, and we want to see whether there is a causal effect on transitioning into expanding industries. We also are interested in exploring kind of more broadly factors that predict labor market resilience, by which we mean the ability of workers to adjust to changing economic conditions, either by transitioning to different industries as job market demands evolve, or by finding new employment after experiencing job loss. So in this vein, we will ask how teacher or school-based characteristics predict school completion and labor market resilience. We'll also analyze how individuals who successfully switch between industries differ from those who kind of sustain long-term losses from industry downturns. I think that's the crux of it. So thank you so much for your consideration, and we're super happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? If there aren't any, do I have a motion to approve?
This is Angie. I'll move to approve.
I second. Yuji. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Next is proposal 12, including remote access request UTA 268, educational profile of Central Texas.
Yes, hello everyone. This is Rodrigo Lopez with E3 Alliance. Apologies if you can hear the echo. I'm joined by Annalise Rhodes and we're actually in the same room. So we're trying to sort out the mic situation.
We don't hear an echo on our end, I don't, or
Okay.
I don't at least.
All right, perfect. So yeah, joined by Annalise Rhodes, our Director of Research and Data. So E3 Alliance is a Central Texas education collaborative that partners with school districts and community organizations using data to explore and understand current topics of interest to our partners with the goal of improving instruction and educational systems. So with this purpose in mind, our project seeks to analyze data from K-12, higher education, and workforce to answer questions related to student academic outcomes and growth, both snapshots and their change over time, and workforce outcomes for these students. So for example, our current work centers on 5 focus areas from cradle to career. We have early learning, math pathways, attendance, high school to post-secondary, and workforce. For each of these focus areas, we seek to answer questions related to the focus area that explore the current landscape and longitudinal trends in that area. And this will help us supplement our understanding of any root causes for these focus areas that we identify with our partners. In addition, we have some specific initiatives that explore outcomes across these focus areas for specific student groups, namely students receiving special education services and emergent bilingual students. Our analysis of this data would be both within Central Texas, within the Central Texas region, and in comparisons across other regions of Texas, as well as Texas as a whole. Thank you for having us. Open to any questions.
Any questions, comments from the board?
Melissa, I just wanted to comment for the researchers. I noticed they are requesting the CCMR MET indicators as supplemental data. And if the board approves this project, I'm happy to take that back to the program area at TEA. They review and approve all requests for their data. So just wanted to be explicit about that process.
Yes, we are perfectly happy to work with y'all on any other needs that need to be met to get that supplemental data.
Okie doke, thank you.
There aren't any other questions or comments. Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Kathy.
Holly.
I motion to approve. This is Kathy. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Just calling in that Kathy.
Thank you for having us.
Proposal 13, including remote access request, UTA 269, examining the effectiveness of the fellowship using the science of engagement used for Texas students and teachers.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a senior data analyst at the Texas Behavioral Science Policy Institute, housed in the Population Research Center at UT Austin. I believe also on this call is Matt Gianni, a research associate professor in Department of Sociology. So our study emerges out of research showing that even high quality math curriculums can be undermined by students' fears of making mistakes. And this is an issue particularly relevant to our adolescent student population. However, to date, most research-based solutions to students' fear of mistakes have tended to focus on mindsets or individual differences and been limited to direct-to-student interventions. So instead, we've developed the Fellowship for Using the Science of Engagement, or FUSE. It's a hybrid 12-month teacher fellowship program designed to promote teachers' adoption of practices that result in a stronger classroom-level culture of learning. Drawing on the latest mindset research, this program helps teachers to develop classrooms where their students feel respected and willing to make mistakes and take on challenges. The study was designed as a randomized controlled trial in which we took a stratified random sample of Texas schools, and it's representative of the Texas student and teacher population. To date, we have one pilot year of data in which the teachers received the treatment content for the 2023 to 2024 school year, as well as 1 year of the RCT, in which teachers were randomly assigned to the control or treatment conditions. We're currently enrolling teachers in our 2025-26 school year for the fellowship, and we intend to continue this going forward into future years. As part of the fellowship, math teachers participate in content modules. They complete surveys about their experiences and attitudes, following 3 professional learning institute meetings throughout the year. Additionally, they administer student engagement module surveys to their students also 3 times throughout the year. So our goal with this proposal is to address key issues facing our Texas schools by linking our survey data as supplemental data to the ERC data. Specifically, our research questions will evaluate the impact of FUSE on student math performance, as captured by standardized test score performance, student math progress by examining course taking progression, as well as examining teacher outcomes, such as burnout and retention. Finally, we're hoping to contextualize these findings regarding teacher retention for the FUSE teachers by examining teacher shortages in Texas more broadly. So thank you for considering our proposal.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
I want to say thank you for doing a beautiful job of using our template to create the data dictionary. It was
I
very
appreciated the template. It's great.
Any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Kathy. I move to
We have
approve.
sorry, we have a note here that OC1 to be
added? Those people.
I'm sorry, did I miss a question or?
No, sorry, we're looking at.
I just wanted to make sure
Looking at-
something wasn't asked, it didn't cut out, okay.
No, we think we wanna. Yeah, you might wanna add the OC one specifically on the list of data to request. The 001, it looks like is on there, but now. For some sectors, they don't collect the 001 anymore, it's the OC one. Might as well officially add that on the, for the THC.
Thank you all for catching that.
Okay. All right, so back to, do I have a motion to approve with the amendment to add the OC1 data?
This is Jackie. I move to approve.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks for being here. Now to proposal 14, including remote access request UTA 270, develop a career-focused course placement recommendation tool for students.
Hi, Peter Bergman, Associate Professor, Economics at UT Austin. Happy to tell you about this one. So our goal is basically motivated by the idea that high school courses can shape the long-run academic and earnings trajectory of students, and so understanding which courses can improve short-run and long-run outcomes for students is important, and also helping them guide their decision-making to make better academic or more informed academic and earnings-related decisions. So our proposals aims to identify or measure the effects of specific courses on short and longer run outcomes. That's usually pretty difficult to do because of selection bias. It's students don't choose courses at random. There's different motivations, supports, initial achievement levels, things that we can't readily measure. So our approach is novel in that we're using variation induced by the course scheduling algorithms used by several districts in Texas that allows us to get a much, we think, stronger causal identification of the effects of courses. And so from those data, we aim to measure the impacts of specific courses on students and the heterogeneity of those effects on students, which ultimately the goal is to understand essentially what courses improve outcomes for different kinds of students in terms of their academic background.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board for the researchers?
Yeah, I see that for the TWC data, you wanted to use the county data in the wage files, but I would just caution you, you can't use that. It's not accurate.
Oh, okay. That's very helpful to know.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll make note of that.
So Peter, I have a question for you. It's nice to see you after so many years.
Yeah, I know. Some a lot of familiar faces on this
I
call.
know. So I know it seems like you home in on this one school district that is using this course scheduling platform. It's called Able, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so I'm just trying to one, how is it being used in that school district? Because so after reading your proposal, I was like, oh, it seems like this study is going to improve the algorithm. But then I was just trying to understand how is this algorithm being used to, I guess, assign students to courses? Could you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, that's right. It's happy to. It's somewhat analogous to student to school assignment mechanisms, say in areas where there's centralized choice, like in New York City. But the difference is that in course scheduling algorithms, you can't use this more traditional deferred acceptance algorithm. You have to use some combinatorics. But the basic gist is schools, when they're setting up, and this may be familiar to all of you all, but they have to create a master schedule. So they have students requesting courses and teachers trying to decide, who's going to go in those courses, prioritizing students, and they need to figure out some way to allocate and schedule these classes and assign students to classes so that there's, as many students as possible can get their first choices, subject to the preferences of teachers. And it turns out like there's no sort of singular optimal algorithm to do that, but that's what this scheduling tool is doing for these districts in Texas. And so we focus in on one district that's using this tool with good fidelity, so that we can home in on the impacts there. But in terms of the overall results, what we get out of this is basically better causal effects of courses on students, because we can control for this selection process much more effectively and even identify some potential random variation in access to classes.
So I guess another question, a follow-up question is, how would this company use the results from your study?
Yeah, everything we do is going to be open source. So any code we generate, any results we have. So they've offered to create some free resources around, hey, these are course trajectories that could be beneficial for students.
Okay.
But more generally, we could be taking this and creating open source code around what we hope to do is create open source code around, hey, what types of students in terms of their academic backgrounds benefit from what types of students. Anybody could incorporate that into their platform if they wanted to, but the hope is that they're doing it with a lot more sound evidence behind it if they do. But it's nothing we build will be specific to that platform or restricted to them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For data elements for supplemental data, Peter, thank you for including information on your proposal. My only request is that we will be, Celeste already has this, but my request will be that please use the data dictionary template, which will include more information for us to consider. And then, this will be just amendment to the motion this time, but that will be my request.
Thank you. We'll make note of that and make those changes.
Any other questions or comments? There aren't any. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendments to revise the supplemental data table? I'll move to approve. As the amendment.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. For being here.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good to see you.
All right, proposal 15, including remote access request UTA 271, evaluating school supports for reproductive health of parenting students, evidence from abortion clinic closures. Have any researchers to talk about this one?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Dan Marthy. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Health Policy and Management at Texas A&M University. And I'll be conducting this project with a colleague, Miranda Yoder, who couldn't be here today. She's an incoming assistant professor at the O'Neill School at Indiana University. So just to give you a basic overview, in 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the constitutional right to abortion in the United States, which essentially left that decision to state legislatures. So here in Texas, SB 8 prohibited nearly all abortions and made it illegal for physicians to perform them apart from rare circumstances. So medical emergencies, rape or incest. And, we have decades of research that shows that increased access to reproductive health care is beneficial for educational, economic, and health outcomes of young women. But it's too soon for us to know how precisely this decision will impact the educational and labor market outcomes of young women in Texas. So the purpose of our work here is to understand and evaluate really the existing policies and social healthcare safety net structures to be able to support the development of policies that mitigate the impact of Dobbs on health and social well-being of young people. And so to do so, we're going to leverage 2013 law, Texas House Bill 2, which led to the closure of nearly 50% of abortion clinics within a year. And we'll use that policy variation measured as distance from a school district to a nearest abortion clinic, and a difference in event study design to assess, first the short run impacts of restricted access to abortion on academic outcomes, including high school attendance, standardized test scores, college enrollment, college graduation, and labor market outcomes. And we will focus on earnings. Number two is we'll look at heterogeneous impacts by age, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic position, and baseline academic achievement, which we'll specify using the STAR test scores. We'll assess the availability of reproductive and social support service in schools through PRS, pregnancy-related services, and school-based health centers that will come from UDS or HRSA, to assess whether exposure to these services or having access to a clinic alters the academic outcomes of students affected by restricted access to abortion services. And finally, we'll assess the availability of non-instructional school staff at the school level that could support pregnancy and parenting students, guidance counselors, health professionals, mental health counselors, to examine whether greater access to these types of support staff will alter the academic outcomes for students affected by restricted access to abortion services. And we really want to be clear here. This isn't, just an academic exercise. We have decades of literature that shows that this restricted abortion access will have, substantial impacts on young people in Texas and may alter, essentially labor market outcomes for young people here. And so our goal here is to really do a causal assessment of existing programs, things that can be scaled up, both offered by provided directly by schools and in the healthcare safety net, so that we could think about approaches to mitigate some of the impacts that we expect. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board for the researcher?
Yeah, I noticed you didn't specifically ask for the county data in the wages from TWC, but I just noted that you are using a lot of county level data for other parts, and I just wanted to make it clear that the county data in the wage files is inaccurate and shouldn't be used.
Okay, thank you. In addition, in our proposal, we note we'll be measuring distance from the county, and that's because we were planning on using supplemental data that's publicly available at the county level, which details access to a nearest abortion clinic. But what we actually want to do, so that's, we have that file now. We're trying to, we want your approval to apply for the restricted version of that, which would enable us to match or measure distance between, the location campus coordinates for schools to the nearest facility, and that's how we'll measure treatment. So did distance grow or stay the same? That's how we'll measure, control group and treatment group.
I have a note here about the FERPA statement. Part of it mentions administering of aid, and I don't know if that applies. here, is that right?
We're happy to strike that from our statement.
Yeah, I would just think about the FERPA statement and write up how exactly the exception that you're calling upon is looked at or is looked at with your research.
I think it primarily applies as evaluation. And so we can amend our FERPA statement to reflect that.
Melissa, do you guys agree that it'd be audit, evaluation, or the studies? Which one?
Seems like
I
evaluation
mean,
makes the most sense.
Yeah, I think if the researchers can provide the justification for one or the other, and the evaluation
Okay.
can be backed up. Fine.
Thank you.
The lawyer in the room also says that's fine.
So on your proposal, I read that you'll find districts with the pregnancy related services program by as recorded in the TA data. And Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but from our documentation side, I noticed that that indicator ends in 2011. So how does that affect your study? Because it sounds like that's an important indicator.
I thought it ended in 2020.
That in 20.
Yeah,
I'm not-
I was curious about that as well. And I looked in, I think it ends, that indicator ends, the last that's reported is 2020.
I don't know, Linda, I thought it went on because I thought I checked recent data.
I think it does go on.
Okay. Okay.
We'll need to make sure that we provided it. Maybe that's where the disconnect is. I can check on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? There aren't any. Do I have a motion to approve with the amendment for the revision of the purpose statement?
I'll move to approve, Celeste.
Second. All second, Melissa. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Great, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn. And a second.
A second.
Who did the original motion? Sorry, I didn't. Who did the original motion? Sorry, so we can
I don't know.
document. I heard Celeste second.
I seconded, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there was one, but this is Angie. I'll motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I second.
Would you? Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. Thank you all for being here today.